Good morning and good Shabbos, everyone. I'm at JFK Airport, about to board a flight to Florida for Shabbos in Palm Beach. After spending 10 days with Palm Beach Synagogue, traveling beautiful Israel from its width to its length. And when I come back, all I can think about is what David Ben-Gurion said, which is that a Jew who doesn't believe in miracles just isn't a realist. Israel is a country where you meet phenomenal, remarkable people with strength, with resilience, with faith in God. And you see a land which is flourishing and teeming with vibrancy and life and joy. And you think about Jewish history and you say, this is a miracle. And you hear stories, miraculous stories, supernatural stories, awesome stories, one after another. And you get so inspired and you start to live on a different plane, a different reality. You know, this Shabbat is the second week of the Shiva de Nechemta, the 7 Shabbatot of comfort. Following the destruction of the temple, we have 7 special Haftorot going all the way to the new year, to Rosh Hashanah, which God gives us comfort, full of promises of renewal, rejuvenation, that despite the destruction, there will be a rebuilding, an ingathering of exiles. The Jewish people will be brought back home. The temple will be rebuilt. And when you go to Israel, you see the 7 prophecies of consolation and comfort come alive before your eyes. And hopefully this will be something we'll carry with us, that we don't have to become so frightened from every single setback, disappointment, or challenge. When we look at the big picture and we see what the Jewish people have come through, we realize that there is a divine power, a divine force, a supernatural strength that accompanies each and every one of us. And therefore, don't just be deceived by what your eyes see, or what your mind understands according to the natural calculations of the pundits, but realize that there's a higher power at play. And therefore, we have to have faith, we have to have joy, we have to have confidence and trust in the future. That's what the 7 prophecies of consolation have told us. And as we see them fulfilled in large measure in our generation, especially after a 10-day trip in Israel, of witnessing firsthand the miraculous existence of the Jewish nation that cannot be explained or defined in any logical way. You know, we had a bus driver, his name is Boaz. He led us for 10 days. A bus driver in Israel. But at the end, we asked him to speak to us. And he got on the microphone and he told us his story. He was a soldier. He was a paratrooper. And then after the army, he decided to enlist in another unit, a very dangerous unit called Duvdevan, which goes into terrorist cells and tries to capture terrorists. And in one of his missions, one of his raids, trying to capture a terrorist, he was shot multiple times in the leg and in the stomach. He survived, and after multiple surgeries, today, when doctors told him he would never walk again, he walks, he rides, drives a big bus. And unfortunately, he limps because one of his legs is a prosthetic leg. But at the end of his talk, he said, if you were to ask me would I do it all over again, the answer is of course. I love this country. I have a beautiful family. I have 3 sons who are all in the army. I would do anything for this country. It's worth the sacrifice I made. That's the spirit of the Jewish people. You know, before we do the Birkat HaMazon, we sing Shir HaMa'alot B'Shuv Hashem. That is Psalm 126 from the book of Psalms, where King David talks about how the Jews sat by the rivers of Babylon and wept. And they said, we want to go back to Israel, as they did. And they said, Az Yimalei Schok Pinu. Then when we return to Zion, our mouths will be filled with laughter. And perhaps there's a deeper meaning to this statement. Az Yimalei, the faith that then, when God will gather us back, when we'll witness great miracles and deliverances, our mouths will be filled with laughter. Rabbi Abraham Twersky, who just passed away a few months ago, they tell a story, the noted rabbi, doctor, psychiatrist, that when his son celebrated his bar mitzvah in Pittsburgh, his first son, many, many years ago, the entire Twersky family came to Pittsburgh to celebrate his son's bar mitzvah. And they were having the meal, the Friday night meal in the shul with all of the relatives who gathered for this great bar mitzvah of this boy from the great Hasidic dynasty of the Twersky family, and his brothers and his cousins and his parents, and everyone was there. It was such a great moment. But they didn't really have a caterer in Pittsburgh, so his wife had cooked all the food, and because there's no Erev to carry the food in Shabbat, everything had to be brought to the shul before Shabbat. And they sat, they sang Shalom Aleichem, they sang Eshet Chayil, they made the Kiddush, and now it came time for the first course, the fish. And suddenly Rabbi Twersky realized that he had forgotten to bring the fish from the home to the synagogue. His wife had cooked it, prepared it, asked him to bring it over, but he had left it in the house, which means there would be no fish on Friday night at the bar mitzvah of his son, with all of his guests present, his family and friends, and no fish course, which he's supposed to eat fish on Shabbat. And he felt embarrassed, he felt humiliated and disappointed, and especially that he did not do what his wife had asked him to do. And so he got up and he had to break the news to everyone. This is what he said. He says, "My dear wife," he says, "you know, you asked me to bring the fish, but unfortunately I didn't. I forgot it, and there's no fish tonight." And he says, "I know everyone could get really upset, really, disappointed and stressed and aggravated about this, but here's what I want you to do. I want you to fast forward 25 years from now, when we will be at the bar mitzvah, God willing, of the son of our bar mitzvah boy tonight, when he'll be having his son's bar mitzvah. And you know what we're going to talk about at that bar mitzvah? We're going to talk about, do you remember what happened at your father's bar mitzvah? When your Zaidi forgot to bring the fish, and there was no fish for the first course, and how embarrassing it was and disappointing it was, and we're going to laugh about that experience." He says, why do we have to wait 25 years down the road to laugh? Well, let's laugh now about what we're going to laugh about eventually. And with that, he diffused the tense situation. Az Yimale Schok Pinu, says the psalmist, since we know that eventually we will laugh, we will rejoice, we could start rejoicing and laughing now, because we know it's all going to work out well. When you go to Israel and you see firsthand so many miraculous events and historical phenomenons that logic and reason cannot explain, it gives you trust, it gives you faith, it renews your belief in Hashem, and you hopefully can live on a higher plane where even when things look challenging and daunting, you could laugh, knowing that eventually things will be well, and we will laugh as we always have, and therefore we could begin to have the joy now, even as we're being comforted during these 7 weeks leading up to Rosh Hashanah. May we have a beautiful, inspiring Shabbat, a Shabbat of comfort and consolation. As we look back at the past, we could look to the future with joy and hope. Shabbat Shalom.